Hello, all of our RTO Doctor Facebook followers, and welcome to another 30 Days, 30 Tips on our second series. I must apologise for last night's absence of 30 Days, 30 Tips. Unfortunately, I wasn't well, and I thought that it was better to stay offline rather than share with you my sneezing and suffering from hay fever. So here I am tonight, and what I would like to talk to you about briefly this evening is the issue of insurance and what happens when things go wrong. So in my experience, I've come across a number of providers who have only had their RTO registration requirements insurance, which is the public indemnity insurance that's required in case something goes wrong. However, there are lots of other different types of insurance that you should consider if you are a registered training organisation or any sort of business really. You shouldn't just limit yourself to the absolute bare minimum. The reason being is because sometimes the cost of not having that insurance can be quite crippling to a business, even to the point where you may end up having to close the business down as a result of having insufficient insurance. Now, I am not by any means an insurance broker. I just know that through experience with some of my clients in the past that they've not had sufficient insurance to protect them from various ins and outs that happen in our industry, and as a result they've had to pay some unfortunate consequences which were preventable. And so tonight I really just wanted to talk to you about some of the basic types of insurance that you might want to consider. Now, whether you're an RTO or whether you're any other type of business, the same rule applies. There are some types of insurance that may be more specific to an RTO's operations, and there may be some as well that I haven't even considered. Some types of insurance may not even be appropriate for all RTOs. For example, if you're in a construction RTO, then you may have insurance that is more relevant to your operation, but it wouldn't necessarily be as relevant to an RTO who operates in the business services sector, for example. If you're in an agricultural RTO, then your insurance needs would maybe differ somewhat to a business services or a hospitality venue, for example. A hospitality RTO. The agricultural type insurance that you might need might be weather dependent. It might be whether or not crops are available. It might have all sorts of different types of insurance that apply to an agricultural or a construction type RTO that are not necessarily relevant to a normal everyday office type RTO. So some of the types of insurances that I've thought of that may be something for you to consider are things like business interruption insurance, cyber attack, workers' compensation insurance, and make sure that you're aware of rulings around contractors. I know that I personally have had to revise my entire business structure and contracting arrangements as a result of the workers' compensation rulings in different jurisdictions in relation to workers' compensation. So please just double check that you are familiar with the workers' compensation rules around contractor arrangements in your jurisdiction, because I know that for many of you, you do have contractors arrangements with your trainers and assessors, for example. Some other types of insurance that may be of relevance to you include personal accident and illness, income protection. You may also want to consider professional indemnity insurance. And professional indemnity insurance is also a good one for any consultants out there that listen to 30 Days, 30 Tips. There are plenty of consultants out there, and not all of them do have professional indemnity insurance. Many resource developers, for example, don't have professional indemnity insurance. And what happens when things go wrong and you get sued? And often when you do have professional indemnity insurance, you need to read the fine print in relation to what does happen if you get sued, because you may not be protected when you think you are. Some other types of insurance that you may wish to consider are public and products liability, stock cover. You may have to have, for example, a whole range of commercial cookery equipment, or you may need to have a whole lot of farming equipment. You may need to have a whole automotive workshop, for example. Depending on the industry type that you have for your RTO, you may need to have a whole lot of equipment and stock to enable you to run your RTO. And what happens to that stock if something goes wrong? Are you going to be able to replace it for next to nothing, or is it going to cost you a significant amount? Some RTOs also have cars and other vehicles that they either have for the purposes of marketing or fringe benefits for tax, for staff, for tax purposes, and all sorts of different reasons why you might have vehicles. Just making sure that you've got adequate insurance, not just for the vehicle, but for third parties and also for your employees in the event of an accident. Also for theft, what happens to the vehicle if it's stolen, and what happens to the contents in the car? You might have laptops and all sorts of different things in the vehicle, and the vehicle gets stolen. What happens to all of the stock, for want of a better word, that is in the car at the time of theft? Some people have corporate travel insurance. If they've got management or CEOs who travel interstate or even intrastate, for some of the larger states like Western Australia, for example, or they may be offshore workers. They go and deliver and assess offshore. They may do BOSIAT training, for example, in various places. They could have a whole range of reasons why they might need to travel. However, they may not have adequate insurance in the event of a travel emergency. Some businesses also use management liability insurance, so that protects them in the event that one of their management staff or a CEO, for example, a director, you can have director's protection as well. In the event that a manager or a senior manager of the company has some sort of legal issue that they were negligent in, or where there's theft or crime involved in their employment. Management liability insurance is another good one for all company owners to consider, regardless of whether you're an RTO or not. You might also want to consider something called group personal accident insurance for the injury, sickness and death of your employees. Again, it might be one of those things where during the process of training and assessment, something happens to a staff member or a group of staff members, and this insurance would potentially protect you in those circumstances. Another one is property insurance, things for theft and breakdown, material damage, what can happen in those circumstances. Directors and officers liability, life insurance, and one that is not often talked about but is becoming more and more common in sort of in line with cyber attack insurance is data protection insurance. So while I don't profess to know a lot about data protection insurance, I would imagine it's something that applies quite significantly to RTOs, and what would happen in the event that they lost data, whether it be on their LMS or their AVETMIS data. I don't even know whether that's something that could be insured, but it may be worth something having a chat to your broker about. It also would mean that perhaps you would want to look at the backup systems that you have in place with your AVETMIS provider or your LMS provider and all those sorts of things. But then it got me thinking about something else as well, which I really just want to touch on briefly. And this is probably more to do with owners of RTOs or CEOs or PEOs, whatever you want to call yourselves. And so this part of the 30 Days, 30 Tips is really directed at you, and it doesn't necessarily need to be someone in an RTO. It could be any type of business. Now, I know that it's something that I've spoken about previously, and as a result of the reflection on this process, I have actually once visited this issue myself in my own business, and it's something that, upon reflection today, I probably need to do again, and we all need to revisit it from time to time to ensure the currency of the information that we're putting together. But I was thinking today about what happens if you die or you are incapacitated and you're not able to do your job as a CEO or a PEO or an owner of a business for any extended period of time or ever again. And so I started thinking about, well, for our followers on RTO Doctors Facebook page or on YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever you're following us from, what would happen to your RTO if something happened to you whereby you died or you were incapacitated for a long period of time? Now, not just what would happen to your RTO, but what would happen to your operations? What would happen to your employees? What would happen to your students? If you're a trainer and assessor and, you know, it's a small RTO and not only are you the CEO, but you're also the trainer and assessor, what would happen in those circumstances? Would that mean that there would be nobody to run the RTO in any future classes that you have timetabled and scheduled? Or would somebody else be a backup and they could come in and do it for you? But also I started wondering about things like passwords and intellectual property and all of our online accounts. You know, we seem to have more and more online accounts these days with logins, and what would happen to you and all of your online accounts if something happened and touch wood, you died tomorrow? Does anybody have access to those online accounts? How would they cancel those accounts? How would they close those accounts? How would they notify that you had died? How would your family members know what to do? And so we often talk about a last will and testament in terms of our own personal lives, but do we often consider it from a business perspective? And that's something that I really challenge you to consider this evening. Probably not the nicest topic to think about, but it is definitely a necessary one, and something that I hope you really do give the attention it deserves, because you don't want to leave it until it's too late and you don't have the insurance coverage, or something has happened and you're no longer able to run your RTO, or people can't access your information to take over in your absence. We just need to make sure that our business operations have continuity, I guess, and that's really what this discussion is about. So thank you for joining us this evening. I hope that today's 30 Days, 30 Tips has been helpful. Don't forget, have a look at all of your insurances. It's also really helpful to have an insurance register so that you've got all of the contact details of the insurance broker that is looking after each and every policy when it's due for renewal. Just like all of your other registers, it's easier to maintain and track and monitor when it's all listed there on a register. Have a look at the fine print and make sure that you compare the fine print like a health insurance policy. You know, sometimes you can have a great insurance policy because so-and-so said that it was the best policy around, but in actual fact, when it comes time to claiming on that policy, the rebate that you receive for the damage that's occurred may not be sufficient to cover the cost of your business. And so that comes back to an issue of value and all of that sort of stuff. So make sure that you've got yourself a good broker who understands the vocational education training sector, and hopefully you will not need to rely on those policies, but they will be there in the event that you need them. Thank you very much, and I look forward to you joining us tomorrow for another 30 Days, 30 Tips. Bye for now.